Hi, everyone. Welcome to Instagram Live today. It's Thursday, and we're so happy that you are joining us. Going to give a moment for everybody to click in to the IG Live, and going to bring Max in just a moment. So thanks for carving out some time for a great conversation. I believe you're going to be encouraged over the next few minutes through the message in Max's new book. And just for Max in general, he has encouragement all over his life. So we're going to see if we can find him. Just 1 second. I'm going to be asking him to join us. So hang on just for a second and we'll find him. Max, come on, buddy. Here we go. Well, would you look who's here?
There's my friend.
Max, I got you. I'm going to turn my volume up just a tiny bit. Everybody, this is America's pastor, Max Lucado. Needs no introduction. But you know what, Max? People say things like that all the time. You know, it's the America's this or America's that. But you are truly America's pastor, and you are also the nicest person I've ever met in my life.
Well,
so how are you? Welcome to IG Live today.
I hope we're recording this. I'm going to play that about once an hour. I'm fine. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing wonderful. It's so good to see you, and just wanted you to know I'm praying for you. You announced some news about your health a few weeks ago, and all of us are believing for you and with you for God's touch and his hand on your life in these days, and not slowing you down, though. You seem like you're going stronger than ever.
Well, I tell you what I'm doing. I'm just reading some good books.
Oh, I love it. Today we're going to get to
I'm serious, man. The message of this new book of yours is exactly what I needed. Managing my thoughts, you know, not giving in to fear, not giving the enemy a seat at my table, not giving him any leeway in my life. It's a daily struggle, challenge for all of us. And so thank you. I can't wait for us to talk about your book.
Well, we're going to talk about your book, and I'm glad we are, Max. This is probably one of my favorite moments in my life right now. And I'm just praying, Max, that through this few moments we have together, that it will help you as an author maybe establish yourself in the writing community of the world, because by all means, you need some help. I'm holding your brand new book in my hands right now, and I'm so excited about it, by the way. And we're going to talk about it in just a minute. And for those of you who are tuning in with us, this is not a book promo deal. You're going to walk away from this conversation encouraged today by the message that's in Max's book. But Max, before we can, and I'm sort of tongue-in-cheek with this, but I'm really not. It has some few pages of some people who are giving an endorsement for your book, because as a struggling author, people need to know, is this guy legit? Like, can I trust this guy? So I'm glad there's some endorsements in here. If you put all the books of all the people who have endorsed your book together and multiplied it by 100, none of them have sold as many books as you have all together. But once you move past that, it says also by Max Lucado. Now, in most books, this is included on the title page, also included, and then there's a few other books listed. It is an entire page in the book, people. It is 3 columns, also by Max Lucado, and they're in alphabetical order, which makes it hard for me to find some of the first ones that touched my life. On the Anvil was an amazing book that I know changed my life and a lot of other people's lives. He Took the Nails. These are books going back to the formation of my walk with God and my relationship with Jesus. And it's just unbelievable the way God has used you. And so thank you. I know I'm speaking on behalf of millions and millions and tens and hundreds of millions, if not billions of people around the world.
But you're kind.
But it's just uncanny. So I want to ask you, before we talk about the book, which we're going to, at what point did you know this is my lane? How did you know, okay, I'm a pastor, I'm a leader, I'm a speaker, I'm a preacher, I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I'm good at all those things, but this is my lane.
Well, I'm also a converted drunk. I was just a mess. Any of you who have teenage daughters, you would not have wanted your teenage daughter to go out with the teenage version of Max or the college version of Max. I was a 6-pack a night guy, and my life was just headed down the wrong track. And God, in His great grace, rescued me. He really did. The divine rescue. I love being a Christian. I do. I don't have it all figured out. I don't have all the questions answered. There's some issues that I continue to struggle with personally, but I love it. I love, love, love. I love the promise of heaven. I love the great grace of God. I love the thought that God never told me to clean up so you come in. He said, come in, we'll clean you up. And that ongoing cleaning process is while we're still on this earth. So I really I'm a blessed man. I'm just a blessed man. And I started writing, Louie, you mentioned On the Anvil, which really dates you. You're not that old, my friend, unless you were reading this book when you were in the nursery. I wrote that in my Brazil days. I was a missionary in Brazil from 83 to 88. And that's when I started writing. And I'm very grateful, very grateful. I really like to work with words. Unlike you, I love to preach. And it's been a great run.
Well, it's shocking to you, but in '83, I was graduating from grad school, and so I'm as old as you are.
Then why don't you look at?
Oh my goodness, we've both been around a long time.
We have.
Let's talk about where we are in life for a moment. I know this ties in a little bit to the message in your book, but I'm trying to get the word pandemic out of my vocabulary because I just feel like I've said it too many times for one lifetime. But I'm using now the term global uncertainty.
Yeah.
We are still in the middle of a global uncertainty. We thought 2020 would be the end of that, but 2021 is 2020 2.0. It looks like 2022 is going to be 2021 3.0. What's your take right now, just for where we are? And how we're navigating and how we're doing. And thank you, by the way, for starting an online everyday devotional moment with America's Pastor. I know I've tuned in many, many days to listen to your encouragement, which obviously that's one of the big gifts on your life, is just to encourage people. But how do you feel like we're doing, and what's the message for people that are watching us right now?
We're just beat up. The anxiety and depression statistics are off the charts. And the most tragic is that the suicide rate is higher than it's been anytime since World War II. I think we're just worn out. I do. I think we're wounded, worried, and weary are the three words I use. I think global uncertainty is a perfect description of this day in which we live. We got to encourage one another. We got to hang in there. We got to build each other up. And thank you for all you do to do this. We've never faced anything like this in our generation. I know other generations have, but this has been the stiff headwinds for our generation. It's an uphill battle. In the middle of all this, however, we find that God is at work. He's changing lives. He's redeeming people, and he's using this to strengthen and call people back to him. I think one of the ironies is that the loneliness, people who report lonely, I read just a couple of days ago, 64% of the people describe themselves as lonely in a day in which we've never had more instant contact with humanity than we do what we're doing right now. But we feel lonely. And I do think that could be because many people are trying to count on people to be for them what only God can be for us, and that true loneliness is truly dealt with a relationship that's first vertical and then horizontal, and so I think that's a challenge that we're facing right now. So how are we doing? I don't think we're doing that good right now. I hate to say, but I have faith, I have hope that revival is going to come out of this and redemption.
You know, you are saying what all of us believe, which is we need encouragement right now. more than ever, but it feels like what we're giving each other and getting from other people right now, Max, is the antithesis of encouragement. That this moment, more than any moment in my lifetime, seems to be the moment where people are attacking each other, not encouraging each other. And I'm not talking about political enemies or cultural adversaries. I'm talking about brothers and sisters in the same family, in the same church, people in the same community. Families are not even able to have a celebratory birthday dinner before it breaks out into anti this or pro that. And so how do we bridge the gap from, we need encouragement, we're going through the hardest time in our generation, but yet it seems like instead of encouragement, we're at each other's throats over every single issue that there is on the table.
We politicize everything, don't we? It's so hard. And like you say, even in churches, maybe especially in churches, we get antagonistic and defensive. I think fear does that to us, Louie. I think fear turns us into tyrants. It changes our personality, and it brings out the worst in us. And so ultimately the solution for fear is a deeper faith, to believe that our good God goes ahead of us and he leads us into everything. Like you say in your book, especially as you focus on the 23rd Psalm, we have a shepherd. We have a shepherd who loves us, who leads us. And if I can just take a deep breath and believe that, I think that makes it possible. Not always easy, but it makes it possible for me to live with people with whom I have disagreements, but to do so with respect, because I've first been accepted by God. Then I can turn and I can accept others.
You know, I wanted to tell you something while we're on this, and I know it's not like I'm broadcasting it to the world, but I was going through a really hard season and kind of a national fiasco a decade or so ago. And you and I really didn't know each other. I mean, I knew you, obviously. I've been reading your books all my life because I'm that old. And we spoke together at an event, a very, very heavy night. We were at a prayer night for the community around Sandy Hook, and we were in a basketball arena in Connecticut. You, myself, and some Christian artists were there just to serve the community, to try to walk with people through pain and point them to Jesus. And you didn't really know me, but I was going through a little bit of a storm in the headlines, and you made sure that you introduced me that night, and you brought me up on stage, and you stood there and you literally put your arm around me. And you told everybody, this is my friend, and you talked to them like I was your best friend when I knew that I had just met you. And it was Max Lucado lending all of your collective weight and reputation to a guy who was kind of getting punched around a little bit in the headline, to say, this is my friend. And that defines my relationship with you, and it defines my it's what I tell people about you. This guy is probably the nicest guy I've ever met. And somehow, Max, you're one of those people that just sort of flies above the fray somehow. And you don't get dragged down into the small things, but you just stay above it all somehow. And I just wonder if you could just talk to a leader or to a parent or someone out there that's trying to stay above the fray right now, but yet everything is pulling them down into the muck and into the stuff.
I remember that night so well, Louie. Not only was I there, I remember my wife was there, and that you allowed both my wife and me the privilege of praying with you, praying for you before we began the event. And you were getting some unfair criticism. Yeah. That happens. As I know you love the story of Nehemiah, and remember when he said he couldn't come down off the wall? I can't remember those two guys' names. They're funny names. Big Than and am I confusing them? Anyway, two guys were trying to distract him from the task that he had taken on, and he just simply told him, he said, I don't have time for you. I can't come down off the wall. I've got a mission. And I believe that's what we have to do. You know, if we're going to try to do something good, there is an enemy out there who wants a seat at our table. He wants to have a voice. He wants to pull us down. But we don't have to engage. I think that's the key. There are certain times in leadership in which we just say, you know, I'm not gonna respond to that email. I'm not even gonna read that email. I'm not gonna get into that conversation. You don't have to get down in the mud with everybody who wants to have a mud fight. And so you just keep going, you press forward. And sometimes it's best just, you know, not to argue with argumentative people, and that's okay.
You know, someone told me one time, Max, and I've loved this. There are a few of those little nuggets that you hear along the way in life that you know, oh, that's a good little nugget. And there are others that you grab onto and you literally come back to time and time again. And someone told me early on when we planted Passion City Church, it was my first time being a local church pastor. I was 50 years old. And they said, Louie, you don't have to show up to every fight you're invited to. And I was like, and I've come back to that so many times. And I'm like, oh, thanks for inviting me to meet you in the alley for a brawl. I think I'm going to pass on that one. Your book is called You Were Made for This Moment. And I know that a lot of it comes out of the story of Esther, which is a very powerful moment in the history of the world, and certainly a moment in the history of the people of God, where he chose Esther and appointed her for something special. But the title, You Were Made for This Moment. Tell us about the title and a little bit about how that unfolds the story that's in the book.
I'm happy to do it, but I don't want to use up all our time without a chance to talk about the enemy at the seat at the table. So don't you eat up all my time. No, the big idea for You Were Made for This Moment is that it is built around the story of Esther, 5th century BC, Persia. She became queen because she was the most beautiful person in the kingdom, which must have been something. She must have been really a head turner. Half the population in the world was a part of the Persian Empire. But she kept her Jewish identity a secret, as did her uncle Mordecai, who worked in the throne room for the king as an advisor of some sort. They kept their identity a secret. And then Haman, the right-hand man of the king, decided a Holocaust was in order. And so they could not keep their identity a secret any longer. And Mordecai is the uncle who urged Esther to speak up. And she reminded him, if I go in there without an invitation, I mean, he could have my head. And then Mordecai is the one who said, who knows but that you were placed in the kingdom for such a time as this. In other words, you were made for this moment. And I think the message of Esther is so powerful because it reminds us that we're not here by accident. We're not here in this generation facing this global conflict apart from God's plan. He knows that Louie has, he knows that Max has, he knows that every single person watching has exactly what they need to face this moment. And we can be that voice of courage. Esther was, Mordecai was, and what appeared to be a story of great disaster actually became a story of wonderful deliverance. It's only 9 chapters, the book in the Bible is. It's famous for being one of the 2 books in the Bible in which the name of God does not appear, which I think is appropriate, because if you're passing through a hard time, you can't find God. But the story of Esther says, even if you can't see him, he is at work behind the scenes, busy bringing about his purpose. And he's just looking for people like Mordecai and Esther to be a part of his plan.
You know, I think, Max, I can hear people in the back of their minds because, you know, the enemy does plant these seeds in our mind all the time. And I can hear someone who's struggling with that thought in the back of their mind right now. If I were the most beautiful woman in all of the kingdom, if my relative was a position of authority or prominence, or if I had access to the king, which I don't, I can't even get my boss to answer my email, then I could be used by God to make a big difference. And I could understand for such a time as this, but I'm off the radar. Nobody sees me. I don't have a prominent place. I didn't come from the right family. I don't have the right background. I don't have a Mordecai in my life. How can that person know today that there's a for such a time moment as this for them?
I think understanding that our call from God is not necessarily a call to prominence, but is simply a call to faithful obedience.
Wow.
Where we are in our world, whether we have a whole bunch of followers or no followers, whether we're big news or no news, that doesn't matter in the kingdom of God. It really doesn't. Esther, yes, she became the queen, but truly before she was a queen, she was, I don't know, maybe a teenage girl in this huge empire. And who would have ever imagined, that she would be shoulder tapped to become the queen? And who knows how God has plans for you. Your call is not to try to go up on the stage. Your call is simply to be faithful to God day in and day out, and know that He will. All of our lives have those people that really no one knew much of except for us, yet they had a profound impact on us. And their impact is lifelong. So just be faithful, do the next right thing, pray, don't give up, don't give in to despair, and God will use you in the right way at the right time.
Yeah, I believe Esther's reminding me today, Max, that God is the one who positions us.
Yeah.
And I think so many times in life, we're struggling and striving to get the position, and maybe sometimes stepping over somebody else or cutting a corner if necessary, but I'm going to get to that place when God's the one in charge of putting us in the right places. All we need to do is be focused on listening to His voice and being courageous in that moment. And that's one of the things that you say in the subtitle. I'm a big subtitle guy. So the title is You Were Made for This Moment. But the subtitle, I think, has the word in it that I'm hearing repeated most often right now in conversation: courage for today and hope for tomorrow. And I think if there was ever a time that we need courageous people, it's right now. And I know in cancel culture, you don't want to be courageous because speaking up means getting shouted down. But talk about courage and where does it come from and what does it look like?
The message that Mordecai gave to Esther when he encouraged her to speak up on behalf of her people to her husband, King Xerxes, that message begins with the phrase, relief and deliverance will come. Relief and deliverance will come, which is such a surprise because up until this point, we don't have any suggestion in the story that Mordecai is a man of faith. In fact, he's a man who's kept his Jewish ancestry a secret up until this time. So when we get to heaven, let's find Mordecai. I want to ask him, what happened? Best I can determine, I think the best hunch is that he remembered how God had been faithful to His people all those generations. Maybe, as a little boy, he grew up sitting on his mama's knee, hearing stories about God delivering the children of Israel through the Red Sea. Maybe he heard stories of David and Goliath. Maybe he knew the story of Daniel and the lion's den. Who knows how many stories he had heard. But in the moment in which he needed courage, he said, you know what? God has a great track record. God has a perfect track record. Yeah. And I'm going to stand on those promises. So he said, relief and deliverance will come. So to all of us today, can I be so bold as to say, hey, deliverance is on the way. Relief is on the way.
Amen.
God, today is not going to last forever. Your tomorrow is going to be better. God is still in control. He will walk you through this. Just don't throw in the towel. Don't give up. Mordecai took a risk. He disclosed the faith. He wouldn't bow before Haman. He took a stand for his faith. And God, the great God of great turnarounds, which is another theme in the book of Esther. How many great turnarounds there are. He brought a turnaround in his story. He'll bring a turnaround in yours as well.
I know that the phrase, the best is yet to come, brings hope to some people, and it really aggravates a lot of people because it feels like a little Christian slogan, like one of those little bumper sticker summations of faith. And sometimes when you're up against the darkness, you really don't need a little bumper sticker. You need something that's gritty and real, and you don't want to hear, the best is yet to come. But in fact, the best is yet to come.
It is.
Heaven is yet to come, and that is the best of the best. And every day, God is going to walk with us until we get there. And so I really want to echo the promise and the hope that deliverance is on the way, that God is on the way. He is a rescuer. He always has been. And I'm sure that when his people were 400 years of bondage and pain and difficulty and all kinds of unanswered prayers, it seemed, and all the while God was organizing a plan and a rescue mission, and he's doing that even today. I love that it says on the top of the book, Max, that you're a New York Times best-selling author. I want to just say to my friends at Thomas Nelson, we already know Max Lucado is a New York Times best-selling author. It doesn't really need to be on the top of the book. He's the best-selling author of all time, people. And this book is available now. I saw someone in the comments, Max, and there are people on this feed, by the way, I've just seen from all over the entire world. In fact, there's hi from Brazil again. There have been a lot of your Brazilian friends linking in today, but the book's available everywhere books are sold right now. So you can get it anywhere you get your hands on books. And I know that it's going to be a big blessing to you in your life. I can't wait to dive in. I've already read a little bit of it. I can't wait to read the whole book. And Max, I just want you to know that we love you. And if people didn't know, Max was saying a few weeks ago to his social media following that he has a little issue going on in his heart right now, and that the doctors are watching it over time. And I love how you ended that by just saying that you felt like your heart was in God's hands. And so Max isn't writing from up in the ivory tower, guys. He's not like 65 floors up looking down. He's right in the middle of it with everyone on this journey. Waiting on God, trusting God, believing God, and putting confidence in God. And so we're praying for you and believing with you, and so grateful for you and the way that God uses you.
Is it my turn now?
Yes, go by all means. We're out of time now, but by all means.
I love you, Louie, and I know this sounds kind of like a bro love conversation, but it truly is. I have such respect for you, Louie, and you and I have weathered storms side by side, and we've traveled the country side by side. We've been through up times and down times. This book is really a home run, folks. It really is. This is an unsolicited endorsement. I'm trying to get my whole picture up here. Don't give the enemy a seat at your table. Let me tell you something. You do not need this book if you manage every thought you've ever had perfectly. But if you, like yours truly, struggles at times with thoughts of fear, with thoughts of anxiety, with thoughts of insecurity, even impure thoughts, whatever kind of thoughts, and you want to know how to, with the power of the Holy Spirit, take every thought captive, then you have a great tool in this book. Louie, a little bit of background here. What in the world prompted you to help us better manage the thoughts that come into our minds?
Well, in one of the interviews, Max, it kind of came out weird, and I didn't know if it was okay or not. But someone asked me, and I'd been asked a lot of very similar questions. And I was in this interview. The book came out, I think, about 5 months ago, doing so many interviews like you're doing now. And all of a sudden, the question just popped out: who did you write this book for? And without thinking, I just blurted out. I said, I wrote this book for me. And I said, I hope that doesn't sound incredibly selfish and that, I'm on my own little island here, but it's true. The story was I was having a pity party, a long one. I'd been through about, 6 months of just a yucky season. And some things had gone down, some things were said, some things were done, and it was hard. It was one of the hardest seasons I've been through as a leader and as a pastor. And you've been through, I don't know how many of those in all the decades that you've been building and leading church, and they happen. And sometimes, all of a sudden things go sideways, and this one, a few things had gone sideways, and now it's months down the road, Max, and a friend of mine called me with a call that my flesh really loved, because the call vindicated me in a little tiny way. When you're looking for vindication, all you need is like one little teaspoonful of vindication. And they said, you're not going to believe what happened. You're not going to believe what I heard today. You're not going to believe how this went down. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so there'd been someone walking through this with me. They had my back the whole time. So as soon as I parked my car, I was driving at the time, I texted my friend and I said, you're not going to believe what I just heard. Can you believe it? If you give these things time. And it was the longest text. And Max, I hate saying this even again today, but I just needed a little commiseration. And I pressed send, and I just stared at the phone, and I was waiting. And finally the response came back, and it was a little blurb. And I was so frustrated. I said, surely they hit send too fast. I need, an equal amount of commiseration to my celebration. And I realized this is it. So I focused on the text, and there were 9 words in the text. Don't give the enemy a seat at your table.
Mm.
And those words, Max, I'm not exaggerating. They just arrested me. And in a second, all of the frustration and the consternation and the staring at the ceiling at night and playing out the conversations in my mind over and over and wanting to make sure that I was right, all of that just blew up in the clarity of that statement. And I realized, oh my word, I have been sitting at the table with a killer. I have been listening to the enemy. I have been engaging him and his thoughts and his ideas in conversation. And he has stolen my peace. He has stolen some of my friendships. He has stolen my rest. He's stolen my sleep. He has stolen so much from me. And it's because I let him.
Wow.
And I stood at the top of my driveway that night, Max, and I said, I am taking my table back.
Amen.
Right here
Amen.
and right now.
You go,
and
buddy.
God has given us the power, the transformative power of his word to take every thought captive. We can't control the thoughts that come into our mind, but we can definitely control how long they stay there.
Yep.
And we can replace them with thoughts that are true and right and noble and pure and honorable and praiseworthy, just like Paul said in Philippians 4. Yeah. And so that 9-word text and that 9-word, it's not my title, that's my friend's title. It came in my text, and that did change my life that night, and it changed Shelly and I's life over the next few months. And there's probably not a week that goes by, Max, that at some point something comes across the radar, and I'm like, no, don't give the enemy a seat at your table. And he comes quick. He knows how to get in the littlest crack and the littlest crevice. But if we're alert, God's giving us the power to take control over our own thoughts. And when we take control over our thoughts, we ultimately end up changing the direction of our lives. And so that's what the book's all about. And it really made a big difference. And it is making a big difference in my life. And I'm just believing it's going to make that same difference in other people's lives as well.
I think in this day in which anxiety is taking so many people down, despair is taking so many people down, that we really need that reminder, Louie. A friend of mine says, just because you have a thought, you don't have to think it. Sometimes we think that a thought comes into our mind, so I need to really think about it rather than stand up against it. In the name of Christ, trust in the power of the Holy Spirit to drive it out. Thoughts they're habitual. They're habitual. Happiness is a habit, so is gloominess. And so we develop these habits over the years. I wish somebody had taught me that as a middle schooler, that I don't have to always be thinking these anxious thoughts. So maybe we got a middle schooler listening today, and that you can hear what Louie's saying, because this is life-saving stuff. Life-saving stuff. Was there a passage, or is there a passage that you found especially helpful or insightful in helping you learn to manage your thoughts?
Well, I think that the main thought in the main passage, Max, that actually came to new light for me as the book began to take shape, or the message began to take shape. This didn't start as a book. It started as a one-sentence message. And I remember being in a group of coaches at this morning Bible study that I was doing. And I was doing a Bible study on Hebrews, and it just wasn't going anywhere. They were in the middle of a losing season. Their fans were at their throat. They were at each other's throats. There was a lot of distrust around the table. Coaching is a very lonely profession, and the highs are high and the lows are lows, and you get fired at the end of the day. So that's coaching. Yeah. And I just was reading the room, and I was like, nobody is tracking along. I think they're actually drawing out plays on their notes and not taking notes on Hebrews right now. And so I just stopped in the middle of it, and I said, you know what, guys, I don't know if this is going to register or not, but the enemy wants to ruin your life and your relationships and your peace of mind right now. And I'm just telling you, you have power over your own thoughts, and don't give the enemy a seat at your table. And when I said that, every head came up, every eye locked onto me, and I realized that phrase is powerful. And it opened up for me, Max, from that little verse in Psalm 23 that I'd never seen it before. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I didn't really ever understand how backwards that is. And I know you've taught about on this before, but I was like, if I wrote that verse, I would have written, you prepare a table before me in your presence. Forget about the enemies. I just want a table in your presence. And he's like, no, I want to ultimately show the world that I am great. And I'm going to do that by satisfying you in the middle of whatever it is you're in the middle of right now. So that verse has not so much to answer your question, but it's become a new epiphany for me, if you will, to realize that God's not always, and in fact, most of the time, not trying to get me out of my circumstance. He's trying to allow me to understand that he's far more than sufficient in the middle of my circumstance, because that's when even the enemies get front row seats at seeing how great he is.
We are more than victorious in all things. He doesn't remove us. We're more than conquerors. I said it wrong. We're more than conquerors in all things. He doesn't remove us from the battle. He brings victory in the midst of the battle. He does.
Amen. So beautiful. Hey guys, I could talk to Max for the rest of the week, by the way. So this conversation could go on for hours and hours and hours. But I really want you to get a hold of Max's new book. It's called "You Were Made for This Moment." So don't think that we got to get out of the moment. Let's try to figure out what God has for us to do in the moment. Amen. And when it's dark outside, the lights shine bright, and I believe Christ wants to shine more than ever right now. So Max, you're such a great friend. I love you. Denelyn, your family, you're amazing. The book's amazing. And I want to encourage everybody to go get a copy of it right away. As soon as you get off this IG Live, just click the link, get the book. It's going to encourage you a lot. And Max, man, I can't wait to see you in person. It's been a minute since we've been in the same space, but
please give our love to Shelley and to London. And
will do. She's close by. Both of them are close by right now. So I'll tell them how much that you love them. Love you, and all you guys that joined us today. Thank you so much for being on. And Max, look forward to seeing you soon. Love you, friend.
All the best to you, my brother.
Talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.